Welcome to Off Balance, the podcast where faith, family, and business collide. I'm Dr. Brooks, a certified master life coach, transformational speaker, and author. Join me as we explore the journey of overcoming adversity and developing resilience. It's time for you to find your strength and reclaim balance. This is Off Balance.
Welcome to Off Balance. I'm your host, Dr. Brooks, and on today's episode, I am going to break down how to review your standard form 50. If you are familiar with it, it's called an SF-50. We're going to review how to make sure there's no errors and the steps that you need to take to correct your federal employment records. So whether you've been through a reduction in force or if you just want to make sure that your file is accurate, then this episode is going to be for you. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I also want to especially thank those of you that listened to the previous RIF episode where I talked about a reduction in force. And so I wanted to follow up with this episode because I want you guys to know that your SF-50 is your federal employment receipt. And so if it's wrong, your benefits, your pay, or even a reduction in force status can be impacted. And so that's why it's so important for you to review your SF-50 to make sure that there is no errors. So what is the SF-50 and why is it important? So the SF-50 is the notification of personnel action, and the purpose of the SF-50 is used for employment verification, retirement eligibility, pay setting, reduction in force retention that is populated if anything is done to your employee record. So say, for instance, if you have a new appointment, any type of promotions, reassignments, change to lower grades, general pay adjustments, change to tenure, change to veteran status, any of those things that's done in the system, it populates the standard form 50. And so that's why it's so important for you to not only review the latest one, but just go through your records to make sure that all of your SF-50s, all of your service is accounted for in your personnel record. And so how do you actually review your standard form 50 for common errors? And so basically you want to go through it. You want to go through it block by block. And so that's why it's so important for you not only to review it, but for you to be able to understand what each block means. On the standard form 50, there are 50 boxes. And so we're going to kind of go through what each of those boxes mean. And block 1, of course, that's your name. You want to make sure that your name is correct. Your name should be reflected on the 50 how it is reflected on your Social Security card. So if you have a middle name on that Social Security card, then it needs to be reflected on the SF-50. If you have a middle initial on the Social Security card, reflected on the 50. If you don't have a middle name, then it should have your last name, first name, and then no middle name, right? And so block 1, that's your name. And then you're going to go to block 2. That's your Social Security number. You want to make sure that your Social Security number is correct. Block 3, that's your date of birth. Block 4, that's the effective date of the personnel action that you're looking at. So whatever 50 that you're looking at, that is going to be the effective date that actual nature of action was effective. Block 5, in block 5, that is the nature of action. So block 5 has actually A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so you want to make sure that each of those boxes, if applicable, that is correct. So box 5A, that is the nature of action code. And then box 5B, that is going to be the nature of action. So say, for instance, if it is a career appointment, it will be 100. And then in box 5B, so A would say 100, and then B would say career appointment. And so B describes what A is telling you. So A is typically a 3-digit code, and then B is going to describe to you what that code is. And then you have 5C, that would be the same. So say, for instance, if you was picked up on a career appointment, but it was actually a direct hire. And so then you would have that direct hire code in the second box. And so basically you want to make sure that you actually understand how to not only read the SF-50, but you want to be able to understand what the actual codes mean. So again, you can have box 5A would have your type of appointment, And then the second one would be the actual code. And then D would be that legal authority. And so it depends on how many actual codes that you have that will determine if C is going to be used and E is going to be used. But 9 times out of 10, C and D will always be used because the nature of action has some type of code that's going to follow it up by, why they brought you on board. And then the next thing that you're going to have is block 7. That's going to be the agency and the sub element. And so in box 7, it's going to talk about like your position title and your position number. And that is going to be specific to your actual agency. And then you're going to have in block 15, the position that's occupied. So say, for instance, if you are new to the government and you have your first action process, then you're probably not going to have anything in the from because you don't have a position that you're coming from. But the to position is going to be that position that you have been hired to, promoted to, reassigned to, and whatever the case is. And so you want to make sure that box 16 is that pay plan. So that could be GS, ES, NS, whatever pay plan that you're in. And then it's going to have your occupational series, which is box 17. And then it's going to have your grade. That's box 18. Box 19 is going to have your step or your rate. And so it is very important. If you ever see in box 19 a 00, then that means someone is on pay retention. But if you are not on pay retention, then you should have whatever step you are, whether that's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you're going to have box 20. That's going to be your total salary. That's that salary that is inclusive of locality. Then you're going to have box 21. And it's going to tell you your pay basis, and it's typically going to say PA for per annual. And then box 20A, that is going to be your basic pay. That is on the regular base table minus locality. And then in box 20B, that is actually going to tell you your locality adjustment. So how much is your locality? And then 20C again is going to be the total salary, which is locality included. And 20D, that is going to be there if you have any type of other pay. And so you want to be able to make sure that you understand your pay. You want to make sure you understand what goes into each box. And then you're going to have box 22. That's going to be your name and location of your position and your organization. And then when you go down to the employee data, that is going to start in box 23. Box 23 is going to be if you have veterans preference. A 1 would be none. A 2 would be if you are a 5-point vet, which means you served in a campaign or expedition, or if you have any type of deployment time or anything like that. Box 3, if you're a 10-point disability. Box 4, if you are a 10-point commensable. And then box 5, if you're a 10-point other. Box 5 is for those family members. So say, for instance, if you are the spouse or the parent of a disabled vet, and they are 100% disabled, and they are permanent, total, and they don't work for the federal government, then you can actually utilize their veterans preference. And so you would have to submit proper documentation to get box 5 on your actual SF-50. I actually briefly talked about that in the military spouse episode. But yeah, so basically box 5 is for those family members. And then you have box 6, which is for 10 points, or 10 points commensable, which is 30% or greater disability. Box 2, that's going to be the tenure. 1, if you're permanent, that means you have more than 3 years of service. And then box 2 is conditional, and box 3 is indefinite. And then box 26, you're going to have veterans preference for RIF. If you are a veterans preference for RIF eligible, it will be yes. And then, of course, you have no if you're not. Box 27, that's going to be that life insurance. It's going to indicate if you are basic or if you have any type of other options, basic times 5 or whatever the case is. So you want to make sure that the life insurance is correct. Box 27 is your annuity indicator. Most people have a 9, but if you are retired from the military, then you're going to have an indicator here. Or if you are rehired annuitant and you're brought back, you'll have a different letter, a different number other than 9. Box 29 is your pay determinant. Most people have a 0 for regular rate, but then you have some that's on a special salary table that will be indicated here. And then box 30 is your retirement plan. FERS, FRAE, and FICA is typically what you would see for KF. But if you have someone that's CSRS, then they will have a different indicator here. If you have someone that is maybe they was previously NAP and then they transferred over, they would have a different indicator there. Box 31, that's going to be your service comp date for leave. This date is very important because this is also, it determines how much leave you're going to earn and all of that great stuff. And so you want to make sure that your service comp date is correct. Box 32, that's your work schedule, full-time, part-time. And then box 33, if it's a part-time, it's going to tell how many biweekly hours you have per pay period. Box 34, that's the position that you're occupied. Is your position a competitive, or if it's accepted, is it a SES position or is it a SES career reserve position? 35, that's your FLASA category. Are you exempt or non-exempt? And then 37, that's going to be the bargaining status. You're either going to be quad 8s or quad 7s, but if you are in a bargaining agreement, then it's going to be different numbers. But quad 7s and quad 8s is generally what it is, unless you're actually in a bargaining unit. 38, that's going to be your duty station code. 39, it's going to be your duty station county, state, and country. And then 41 is going to be your employee ID. That is going to be that 5-digit code that your agency utilizes. And then 42 is going to be your department code. And then 43 is also going to be a department code. If it's like a reassignment, promotion, or anything like that, it's going to show what that code is. And 45 is going to be whatever remarks is used to code that personnel action. 46 is going to be your agency. 47 is the agency code. 48 is that personnel office ID. 49 is the approval date. And then 50 is going to be that signing official for that actual HR office that's signing off on that actual action. And so, again, you want to make sure that you know how to go through and review your SF-50 to make sure that everything on that SF-50 is correct. And so if it's not correct, then you want to make sure that you reach out to your HR office to fix it. What are some of the red flags that you want to look for? You want to make sure your series and grade is correct. You want to make sure your SED is correct, because all of that stuff is going to affect your leave or a RIF. So say, for instance, if a RIF is about to happen, then you want to make sure that those are definitely correct. You want to make sure that there's no mistake in your veterans preference or in your retirement code, because those things can negatively impact you. So again, if you look at your SF-50 and you see that there are incorrect information, then you want to contact your HR servicing office and you want to say, hey, I reviewed my SF-50 and I noticed a discrepancy, and you want to tell them what to mention, and then you want to make sure that you upload that SF-50 and any supporting documents. So say, for instance, if you review your SF-50 and you see that your veterans preference is incorrect, then you want to upload that SF-50, and you want to also include your DD-214. And if you're asking for like a 10-point or a compensation, or a commensable rating, then you want to make sure you also upload the SF-15 as well as the VA letter. It takes, depending on your agency, it can take anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, a week to about 6 weeks, depending on your agency. So you want to make sure that you are proactive, especially before any type of events like a RIF, retirement, or promotions. You want to make sure that your personnel record is correct. How do you keep your employee records up to date? You want to make sure that you have access to your electronic official personnel folder. The best practices: check it quarterly. You want to save your SF-50s. You want to keep copies of your training certificates, appraisals, and awards. And you want to be able to download your personnel folder, especially if you know that you are about to leave federal service or if you're about to transfer to a new agency. Whatever the case is, you just want to make sure that you have access to your personnel folder. And I think I will do an episode on how to download it, because you can go in and request to download it. So you just want to make sure that you have it. So don't wait until there's a problem. Know what your SF-50 says. Don't wait until there is a problem. It is your responsibility as an employee to know what your SF-50 says. It's your responsibility as an employee to know what your personnel record says. It is your responsibility as an employee to know what your position description says. And so if you are a federal employee, I want you to share this with someone else that, maybe your colleague, so that they can understand the importance of their SF-50, so they can understand the importance of making sure those benefits codes are correct, making sure that SCD is correct, that veterans preference is correct, making sure that if you are in a collective bargaining agreement, that is reflected on your SF-50. Because it is so important, especially in the times that we're in right now, where a lot of agencies are talking reduction in force. So I challenge you today to go into your EOPF, look at your records, and make sure everything is correct. You go through and you like, oh my God, I'm missing time. Like I used to work for this agency and I'm not seeing it. Okay. Reach out to your HR department and tell them, hey, I need you guys to request my records. And then they'll request the records. And then when those records are received, they'll verify your time. So say, for instance, if you look and you're missing 2-3 years from your SCD, not a problem. If those 2 or 3 years are actual federal time, then you can actually get your department to request the records. If it's military time, then they're probably going to have you do an 813, especially if you're retired, to kind of get those dates verified. But either way, your HR department will tell you exactly what it is that you would need to do for them to get your records up to date. And so again, I hope that this episode has brought you some type of insight. I know myself, anytime I code a personnel action, I actually go into the person records and I look. I always do an audit of the record, a quick scan, to make sure that the action that I am about to code will be legal, because there's no action proceeding. There's no action before this particular action that was incorrect. So I do a scan. I log in. I go into the system that we utilize to code actions. I kind of look from there, but then I jump into the EOPF of the employee and I do a scan. And I make sure that that action that I'm about to code is not going to be illegal because the actions before it were wrong. And so I always do that. That's just something that I've been doing from day one of being an HR professional. Most staffers do that, but you have some that don't. And so, again, you just have to make sure, we're human and we do make errors. But I always go back, make sure that pay was set correct, go back, see how did we bring them on. I go back and I look through that EOPF. I personally do it every single time. I'm not going to code an action if I don't review the whole personnel record in its entirety. You have some staffers that may not do that, but that's okay. Not saying that it's a right or wrong way, but I personally am not coding a personnel action unless I audit the record first, right? And so that is so important. So again, I challenge you, go through your electronic official personnel folder. I want you to make sure everything is correct. I want you to get into a habit, check it quarterly. When you get into that folder, look at your benefit form. Make sure you have your benefit form in there. Make sure that you have who your beneficiaries are. Make sure you have who gets that last paycheck. All of your beneficiary forms. Make sure that you have them in there. Even though the states are going to go by president, like if you're married, children, whatever the case is, you don't want to put your family through that. So make sure you have your benefits form identified in your actual personnel folder. You want to make sure, again, everything is in there. I probably would do an episode where I talk about how your SCD impacts your retirement and leave accrual. I may do an episode about that because I think a lot of people just kind of skim over that SCD and don't look at it. But your SCD is so important. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I would probably follow this up with a benefits episode. I'm not sure because benefits is tricky and it's case by case. And I don't want people to take what I'm saying as gold, even though the information is going to be accurate. But it's just different things that can impact your STD and all of that good stuff. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to share, comment, and like this episode. And let me know what you guys want to hear coming up. Again, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. And until next time, be resilient.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to rate this episode and share it with your family and friends. Tonight, learn more about your host, visit brooksdeming.com. Until next